Hello and welcome to the Psychic Wave podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Sanishin, and on this episode we had Eric of First Fire. So I first met Eric at the Satellite in LA, and I was pretty drunk, and it was in the parking lot, and we made plans for him to come on my podcast, and it actually happened. He's here, and it was a lot of fun talking to him. I said to him after the podcast that he makes me nervous because I feel like I can't not be honest with him. And that cracked him up pretty hard, which is really funny. But, you know, you meet certain people where you just start talking to them and it just starts flowing. And you might start to be a little bit revealing about certain things. But fuck it, he felt to me like somebody I could trust. And he seemed receptive of what I wanted to say and like he was actually listening. So I really enjoyed our conversation. Really cool dude. And I hope to see him again. I will see him again, actually. He is playing a show on the 25th that I will be at. And I'm just so thankful that people will come on the podcast. He had a teaching gig in Ventura, and he was out there teaching all day, and then he decided to come on out and do the podcast here in Fullerton when he lives in Highland Park. So he completely shot past his home, went further south to me, and now he's going to go back home. And it's about 11:42 p.m. on a Thursday night, and we just finished the podcast. And that's the rock and roll life, I guess, but I still appreciate it no matter what. Even if these guys are used to doing this sort of thing, I really appreciate it. And I'm having an issue with how often I talk about trying to get my life on track, because I don't want to give the impression that I'm fucking up daily. I'm just saying I'm at that point in my life where I feel a strong desire to be much better than where I'm at. And I know it starts with diet and exercise. And, you know, it's just fucking hard, man. I'm busy and I don't necessarily always know what I'm doing. And I make up for it by being surrounded with really, really good people. But to be the best that you can be, you have to work on yourself so that you can present the best version of yourself to other people. And I didn't drink any beer on this podcast. I mean, it is pretty late, but I've done it before. We just had coffee and we talked, and I feel fucking great. I feel like I had a level-headed, clear conversation with somebody, and it's silly things like that, man. It's silly things like that. But I moved out of my parents' house when I was 18, 19, and it was just day after day of partying, you know? And I'm 24 now, and my life's a little bit different, and it's hard to break the habits that you create when you're 18 or 19, and that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get out of being a kid, you know, and grow out of those childish tendencies that are all about immediate satisfaction and try to work at things that are more long-term. And it's fucking weird, man. If I keep doing this podcast, you know, as the years go by, I wonder how I'm going to look back at this time in my life. It's a growing process, and it's fucking weird. And at the same time, I feel super blessed to be around amazing people. It's a conundrum, man. It's a conundrum. And this conversation that I had with Eric of First Fire was really needed. He's a good person. And hope you enjoyed the podcast. Thanks. You ever seen, what's his name? the guy that always says another one, the producer dude.
I don't know.
I'm thinking T-Pain, but it's not fucking T-Pain. DJ Khaled.
Oh, yeah.
He always says, like, another one or whatever. But have you seen that interview where he's, like, trying to say jewelry?
No, and he can't say it.
He calls it jurely. He's trying to,
like a verb.
Yeah. He's, like, on radio interview, and he's trying to, like, say that, that he's got so much jewelry. Yeah. It's like, but it's not even about the jewelry. And the guy's like, it's jewelry. And he just can't say jewelry. But anyway, you've got some flash on you, man.
Oh, thanks, man. I feel like that has to be like a plant. Like, he was like going on the radio
to go viral.
And he was like, yeah, I'm going to say weird shit so that people talk about me.
I know that they do that, but
yeah,
I think that guy's just brain dead in many ways.
Yeah. But yeah, so these are both my grandpa's actually.
Oh, okay.
My mother's dad, and this ring is significant in like two ways, because like basically like I put the ring on and the watch on when I'm like ready to go out and like meet the world and like be a member of like society and put up with everything that we have to put up with.
Right.
And then when I'm like with like a very close friend, or when I'm alone and I'm home and ready to be alone, then like I take it off, and it feels like a spiritual kind of clothing.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
And then this ring, like every time I put it on, like on the one sense, it like reminds me that I'm gonna die one day, because this was like worn every day by like my grandfather, who is dead.
Right.
In like a positive way, like coming to terms with my death,
right,
and coming to terms with like death being like a natural.
I feel like one of the main things that American society like hides from is like aging and death, and then we get there and we're like super freaked out by it. You know what I mean?
Dude, so like my youngest student is 7 years old and my oldest student is 75 years old. And I have like a good amount of, I think I have 4 students over the age of 65.
Okay.
So like today I was talking to this one guy, and he was saying, he was like, man, you know, if you can avoid getting old, don't let it happen to you.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. Death doesn't really scare me. I mean, I worry about dying because I think there's really only 3 ways you can die. It's like you can die peacefully in your sleep, you can get sick and die, or a really bad accident of some kind. What other options do we have?
That is if you have exhausted
yeah.
all of the options.
But I'm not, afraid of it. But it's funny that you mentioned that that's your grandpa's and you wear it for that reason. My dad died when I was 10, my biological father. I've had a stepdad since I was 1. Amazing dude, taught me everything I know. So I wasn't lacking in having a father around. But he had a watch, and when he died, I got all of his stuff, and I took it off when I was like playing basketball or something, when I was like 10 years old, and just gone. And it's one of those things that like makes me feel so bad, like to this day, but also I was 10, and I was in charge of a lot, like a dead person's stuff. I didn't know what to do with it,
Yeah.
But I definitely understand the principle of like talismans. You know what I mean? People get weirded out when you say words like that. Certain people, you know what I mean? I don't either, but I just mean like if you can surround yourself with objects that make you feel good, like I'm not going to go in and say that there's science behind it, but if it makes you feel good, it makes you feel good, Well,
I think the science is that it makes our brains happy, and that's okay.
Right, that's the science. You get some kind of reaction in your mind to it, or in your brain.
Yeah.
So your grandpa was an old man then, by the time he passed. He lived a long life?
Yeah. He died, I mean, not like crazy old. He died when he was 86, I think.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's finishing the race, I would say.
Yeah.
At an appropriate time.
For sure.
Yeah, my grandpa just turned 80. And I was like, That's weird.
Yeah.
That's super weird.
Yeah. I have this friend who, I mean, yeah, she's a friend now. But she's 92, and I go and I like spend time with this person like once a month. She lives in Pasadena. And it's crazy like being friends with someone who's in their 90s, and she's like super quick, and she like,
yeah,
but it's nuts. Like,
I just can't even fathom that amount of time. You know what I mean? I'm like, I can, but I have nothing to compare it to.
It's like when she looks at me and she like tells me things, or she like encourages me about something, there's so much more weight to it.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh my God, like you're 92.
Yeah.
You've seen so much stuff and so many people.
Is this a student of yours for music?
No, this
you just happen to know a 92-year-old.
Well, so in October, I was very depressed and very poor. And
those usually go together.
Yeah, usually.
Yeah.
And I was looking for a therapist, and my friend Johanna Chase referred me to this lay counseling ministry at All Saints Episcopal Church in Pasadena.
Mm-hmm.
And I like grew up very given to evangelical Christianity. In the past like 4 or 5 years have completely deconstructed that and like reconstructed like a modern faith of my own. But
right.
I had a resistance to wanting to meet with anyone affiliated with any kind of faith structure.
Right.
But I went because it was free, and my friend Johanna is like a very progressive modern individual, so I trusted her opinion about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I went for an intake and ended up getting connected with this therapist who I won't say her name for her own.
Yeah, of course.
And
what's her address though?
Exactly. Or her social security number.
Yeah.
Would be great.
Original jokes.
It's like if I knew her address, it's just in my phone. Like I just,
right.
I just Google
Map.
Like I couldn't even tell you. You could put a gun to my head and I could be like, it's off Orange Grove. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
it worked out then.
Yeah. So we like, there's an allotted amount of sessions that you get with that ministry, and it was like amazing. We met for like 14 sessions or something.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, we just enjoyed hanging out so much that she was like, do you want to be friends?
Cool.
Like, you should just come over for coffee.
That's awesome.
So I go see her like once a month.
That's really good. Yeah,
It's crazy.
I wish I was strong enough to ask for help more. You know what I mean? Like I would never say that I'm at a point in my life where I run the risk of I'm like doing small damage to my life daily or weekly. You know what I mean? Like things are just not like where you want them to be. It's like good things are happening, but also like there's a lot of things I don't deal with, which I think happens to a lot of people. But everybody that like says they have a therapist or my friends that like have gone sober, I'm like, you know, it sounds like a pretty fucking good idea sometimes. And it's one of those weird things where it's like I don't really have any actual problems. They're just like minor problems that like you wouldn't think somebody would want to go to like a therapist or something for it, but it's more of that I'm too stubborn to just ask for help in general. You know what I mean? So it's crazy. Like that's my crazy thing. But it's a stubbornness in the way that I want to do it by myself, but you can't always. I know for a fact you can't always do everything by yourself, which is it's like, see, I'm constantly fighting with myself. It's crazy, man. Not crazy, just like you're sitting here like, who the fuck did I just agree to do a podcast with?
No, I see you, and you're a beautiful individual.
Too kind. Yeah, you haven't seen everything, though.
I can't see everything.
No, you can't.
And that's part of the beauty of there's no destinations, right?
Are we going that deep?
We've been that deep.
We've been that deep. Yeah, I've gone that deep many a time.
In reference to your like minor issues or your major issues, or some people use the language of like capital T trauma or like lowercase t trauma. Like I think my biggest issue with going to therapy, one, I grew up in a household that there was like a stigma towards mental health in general and like seeing a therapist in general. Like when I first started seeing a therapist, I think like 3 or 4 years ago, I was like afraid to tell my parents because I thought they would freak out.
Right.
And they ended up being like really sweet and really supportive about it. But my thing is like, you know, like I'm a white heterosexual male living in Los Angeles,
right,
who like struggles with depression half the time. Like there's so much more pain. There's so much like other stories are so much worse than mine. Yada 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 yada. Yeah, but then like the thing that I've had to come to terms with, that I have to continually come to terms with, is that like for whoever else is dealing with like more pain, it doesn't help their pain at all for me to like not deal with my pain.
Yeah, it's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, or like financially, like I talked about like being poor in October a little bit, like
poor
like
in October.
Me, because I it's like in a record or something. But because like I'm coming to terms with being an individual in a society that uses money. Like it's just
I know,
like,
man.
It's a hard thing in general. But like one of my biggest things was, you know, there's so much poverty in the world. Like who am I to have money?
I know.
But then realizing that like by being poor myself, that doesn't help anyone else in a state of poverty.
Yeah.
So
it's so weird, like the vast like polar opposites that living on Earth has. Like there's people that have what's the dude, the Amazon dude? I forget his name, but he makes like
Tarzan.
no, like the website. No. But he makes like $2,000 every second or something.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, man, that guy could not spend enough money. Like he couldn't spend it all if he tried. He could get. I don't even know if it's just fucking nuts. And then there's somebody who like has no concept of money. You know, like maybe a bartering system, like tribes and stuff. I know there's still like a lot of undiscovered tribes out there. So it's just weird. You used it earlier, the pendulum that swings.
Yeah,
it's wild. But man, this is why having a podcast for me is so fucking weird, because I meet so many different people. You know what I mean? And I meet a lot of different people, but mostly they're all the same. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I am talking just mostly strictly creative people, but I mean, like, really at the end of the day, like, the choices they make are pretty much the same. It could also be the area we live in, but I think being human is just, we're programmed in a way. Like, always we have base things that we react to. You know what I mean?
What do you mean by decisions?
What do I mean by the decisions that they make? I just mean, like, you can tell what they want out of their lives, and we're all kind of striving for the same thing. If they're mentally sound enough, they're all kind of striving just for a place to call home, either in people or an actual location, and that's almost it. Like,
yeah,
that's it. And being uncomfortable in the place you call home is like what I would consider when I've been super depressed in the past or like had major anxiety. It's like even when you're home, it doesn't feel like home. Or even when you're alone with yourself, it doesn't feel that way. Well, anyway, I'm here with Eric from First Fire. But yeah, man, I first met you outside the Satellite, and I was hammered.
You were pretty drunk.
I was pretty drunk.
Like when you told me, like, "Hey, come on the podcast," I was like, "Okay."
You guys were so nice. Who were you with? You were with somebody else. I think it was another dude in another band. No.
Oh my gosh, who was standing with us? It was Gabe, I think, of Sycamore, who plays guitar
That sounds right.
and sings in
Yeah.
Sycamore.
Yeah.
He has a very strong beard.
Like I said, I was hammered. I just remember I peed in the parking lot after that, and then Sarah Tudson drove me back to Kat Bing's place,
Mm-hmm.
and then I threw up. It was fun.
Sounds like a great night.
You know, it was a really good night because I never stay the night at people's houses.
Okay.
By choice, because I'm usually like, nah, I'm going to go home to my own bed. That's
Sure.
like where I feel most comfortable at. And then, you know, it was her record release, Illuminati Hotties. And I'm friends with all the Iris folk, and they live with Kat, and Kat lives with them.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just like, I had this overwhelming feeling like that I'm safe.
Yeah.
So I got super fucking hammered. Super hammered.
Cool.
It was... I would take that night back. Besides meeting you. Like, I said some shit I should not have said that night. That was like one of the days where I was like, you know what? I can't keep burning the wick or burning it at both ends. What's that phrase?
No, you're right.
And it's slowing down. But man, yeah, it's just like I never really drink hard alcohol anymore. And then when I do, I realize why I don't drink hard alcohol.
Sure. It's hard to keep track of.
It's hard to keep track of. Yeah. Where'd I lose it? Up here.
Where'd all the alcohol
Up
go?
here.
It's in my stomach.
Right. But so I drunkenly took your information.
You did.
And then I soberly accepted. Yeah.
A friend request of sorts.
Friend request of sorts.
Or an Instagram request.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to keep up with all of the verbs.
There are a lot more verbs these days. There are.
What's up with all these verbs?
Dude,
I feel like I'm like 50.
Yeah. It's going to be hard, man. Technology is going so fast. But before I go off on too many tangents, I checked out your music, and I did check out the post about your grandfather's ring, and that you think he wouldn't really have liked your music, which was funny to me.
I'm glad you enjoyed that. Writing descriptions on Instagram is one of the hardest parts of being a musician, I think.
You know, I tried for a long time to like take it seriously, and then I tried to be funny with it, and now it's just whatever mood I'm in. I don't really think it matters. It doesn't matter for most people. Yeah. But like for people like me, when I read that you're wearing your grandfather's ring and he wouldn't like your music, I thought it was funny.
Cool.
But yeah, I checked out your music. It's really good, man. And one of the first things that I recognized was I really liked the guitar sound because it reminded me a lot, at least in the song Strange Man, a lot of Johnny Greenwood style playing. Cool. And you're playing telly, so it might come from there as well. But you are a trained musician, for sure. And you train other people.
I am a trainer. I am a trainer, and I am a trainee.
Right. So where did First Fire start?
First Fire started in my muse, who is a fictional or non-fictional female consciousness that may or may not exist.
I feel like people don't say that if it's actually a person that doesn't exist, but okay.
So, man, there's so many ways to answer that question. But yeah, that's kind of how I feel about creativity is I compartmentalize like myself. So there's like myself, there's a part of myself that is this muse. Mm-hmm. And that muse is the person who is pushing towards these like creative endeavors in like a really pure sense. And that's a lot to do with the name First Fire and what it means for me, because I studied jazz guitar at Cal State Northridge, and I studied classical guitar at community college. So I had these like 6 years of kind of like intentional theoretical, but also like deeply musical and deeply emotional study. But it wasn't study that was like inherently like me and like my essence.
Right.
So graduating and moving to Highland Park, and having like a season of like soul searching and trying to figure out, because I had been leading my own like modern jazz quintet and having a lot of fun doing that and writing like modern jazz music. And I had just started kind of singing and putting lyrics and like some jazz stuff, and I was thinking like, oh, maybe that will be like my thing. I'll like merge like modern jazz and like traditional songwriting.
Yeah.
But after graduating, it was really clear for me to see how much my playing jazz was to like impress other jazz musicians, and it wasn't like a true expression of like who I am.
Yeah, I could understand that for sure. I mean, I am a very mediocre guitar player, but my point is always just to try and express myself as creatively and honestly as I can. You know, which is like the hardest fucking thing to do. Yeah. I know, like my brother, he's an amazing musician on like everything, and the hardest thing for him to do is write songs that sound like him. He like just has so much trouble doing it. Yeah. You know, and it's a hard pursuit to find out what you sound like what your sound actually is. It should always be changing, I think, but man, it's really easy to copy other people too.
For sure.
Like, it's almost the easiest thing to do.
Sure. And I think it's a necessary part of like how humans learn things. So like the first thing that children do when they play is like they imagine what it's like to be a truck driver, or imagine what it's like to be a doctor, and they imitate. And like that's how we learn. And in the jazz community, like, because in like the indie rock community, you know, like you should never imitate anyone. You need to be like completely original. But like in the jazz community, like if you're like playing a solo and then you take a chorus where you like really sound like John Coltrane or something, it's like it's so praised to be able to imitate someone like very well.
Well, because all of or most of beloved jazz is like nuanced. You know, it's like focused on things that happened that were so indescribable and would only happen once in a lifetime, but got recorded, you know? Yeah. And so when you can mimic something that should be unmimicable, that doesn't sound like a word.
I'm going to let it pass.
Okay, yeah. Okay, thank you.
I'm going to accept this as communication.
Yeah, you understand what I'm saying. That's communication. But yeah, I see what you mean. But it's stupid too because, you know, the indie rock community sounds so much like each other. Like there's different sections of it, but you can always tell somebody's influences. And I think it's silly to try to hide it. It's like it's gonna show anyway, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
So where did you grow up?
I grew up in Simi Valley, California, which is a suburb of Los Angeles, like northwest of the San Fernando Valley. Right. And then my parents shipped me out, drove me
Felt like
to a private school in North Hills, which is in San Fernando Valley, for my junior high and high school, because I'm the youngest of four, and all of my other siblings went to that school, so my parents just felt comfortable sending me over there. Right. So then, like, while I was at that school, I was making friends with people who lived in, like, Studio City and Santa Clarita.
Was it like
and Pasadena?
boarding school?
No.
No. Okay.
No. They just drove me there every day.
Got it.
And it was like a 45-minute drive or whatever,
Okay.
which isn't like the end of the world.
No, it's not bad.
I tell some people that and they're like, why the hell did your parents?
Well, if they thought it was a good school, it makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
it's like I grew up in Simi, but I didn't grow up with the vibe that like most people who like grow up in Simi and go to Simi High School I was thankful that I grew up surrounded by all these kids that were in these different cities, and I was spending time at their houses and kind of getting a little bit of an exposure to like Los Angeles.
Right. So what do you mean by people that grow up just in Simi Valley? Like generally, what are they like?
It's just like so suburb.
Oh.
And it's kind of like small town almost.
Yeah.
And like everything is very copy and paste to like the way that
the houses look the same.
The houses
the people look the same.
How people dress. And it's like you could say the same thing about Los Angeles. You know, it's like trends are trends. But I feel like by and large, the people that I like run into on the street in Highland Park are like more honest than like the people I would run into on the street in like Simi Valley.
I felt that way with LA as well.
Yeah.
Like when I know a lot of people now in LA and I go out there all the time, and the people that I have met have been incredible people. And so it's like the percentage of people that I've met over there that are honest and willing to share with you a little bit more than maybe the average person would, that it's a high percentage. But then I always feel like that's a douchey thing to say that somebody who lives in the suburbs can't be cool. You know what I mean? And cool in the sense of like just being honest with who they are and being a good person.
Totally.
But you can be a good person in the suburbs. I think it's just like harder because the hand you're dealt is so cult-like in the suburbs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
At least it's like that here, even in Fullerton. Like certain areas, it's like really culty.
Sure. Well, yeah, I in no way meant that as like a blanket statement of all people.
It's funny that we even have to say that. I know
it's fun, and it's funny thinking about like Highland Park as a city because, you know, like most of the people who live in a big city moved there from a suburb. And like to talk about Highland Park specifically in the peak of its like current gentrification, there being like these two dominant communities, like the young, affluent, white creative community and the like somewhat impoverished Latino community that has like lived there for generations.
Right.
So yeah, man, like every community is a mixed bag.
Yeah. Fullerton here, I mean, I just don't have anything to compare, you know, I can't compare this to LA at all, Fullerton. I mean, we've got like certain sections of Fullerton that are obviously very similar to each other and then some that are so different. But it's very like old town here sometimes. Very small town, but really like the end goal for a lot of people in Fullerton is to stay friends with your high school friends well into your 60s. But when you're 30, knock somebody up, buy a house, and then just like have your friends over to drink beer in your garage at night. And that's like the goal. Like that's the goal.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, like that's I get how that could be relaxing and comforting, but holy shit, I just can't do that.
Yeah.
I also don't know where I'm supposed to be yet, but I'm doing this now.
I don't know that there is a supposed to.
Yeah, I know. My point is just that like there are a lot of people that already have their lot planned out, and that's nuts to me. And Fullerton's a lot like that. But Highland Park in itself is like a parody of itself so often.
Oh, it's hilarious.
It's really funny.
I've lived there for 2 years, and I feel like it's already been 8 different cities just in
Really?
the 2 years I've lived there.
What do you mean?
It's just like changing so quickly, and the amount of like white people who are moving in and like the shops that open and and like I'm a part of it. Like I can't speak of it judgmentally, but
I think you can still be a part of it and speak judgmentally. I don't
well,
think there's
yeah, you're right.
I think that there's a lot of like it's weird right now. People are supposed to feel guilty for being white and in a nice area. Mm-hmm. I think but maybe if you're a bad person and you're white and you're in a nice area, then yeah, it feels shitty. But I think if you try to contribute to whatever community you're in, whether it's a low-income community or a high-income community, I don't think it makes any difference. Just be good. But LA is really focused on moral, like what's morally right, and that doesn't always line up with what works.
Absolutely. Because we have inherited this like culture of capitalism and how you go about things with Congress and voting and buying a house and having a bank account. And I think that especially when we're in our 20s, it's easy to be like idealistic and not pragmatic.
I heard someone, I forget who said it, but they said if you're young and not progressive, you have no heart. And if you're old and not a conservative, you're an idiot. And I was like, and it like,
dude, I know.
But that's the way it kind of ends up going, because we have all these idealistic things, and then we kind of get some things, and we get older, and we have a family. And now, and then you get older, and you're like, don't take this away from me. I worked. This is my goal.
Yeah, Republicans aren't stupid. Yeah. They just have their perspective.
Yeah, they have their own perspective. I mean, they're stupid in the way that every human is stupid.
Sure. I mean, there's that.
Yeah, and I get mad at money a lot.
Yeah, man.
But then when I sit down and I really like think, okay, so what's another way this could all work? What's another way we could have this much or save this many people medically every year? Yeah. You know, give this much education to kids. What's a way we could do all that without money? And I don't have a fucking clue.
Well, it's like the reason that, like, the fact that we have like these, and the fact that you can like go to Guitar Center and buy a guitar for like $150 or $200.
Yeah.
Like, is all because our society has become so efficient, like with money.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like
it's worked.
Pros and cons to everything.
It's worked. It's made a lot of people very happy and helped a lot of people, but you know, I can't think of another way that's better.
Yeah.
I mean, I just don't know of one. My mind can't think of one. I've heard some theories, but man, they all have their holes too. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I think maybe the problem is coming up with a new monetary or like value system that sustains our like current network and our current society.
Right.
Like the answer would be to like break down society
right.
and like
Fight Club it
and like we all just need to like cities need to not exist. And we all need to be like hunter gatherers or something for the barter system like, to work.
Yeah.
There would just need to be not like.
I think about that kind of shit all the time, and I'm like, man, if we even just had an earthquake right now, and like trucks could not supply food to Los Angeles, you know, because Los Angeles would run out of food. Like within a week, you know, like if they couldn't get food here from like, you know, Middle America or whatever, I don't know what I'd do. I would die.
Have you seen the movie The Purge?
I have not, but yeah, I'm sure I know the premise of the movie. Or like I think about, you know, I get pissed off that I have to pay bills, and then I'm like, well, I don't think I could kill a deer with a bow and arrow. So I'm pretty sure this is all right. I'm pretty sure I'll pay my bills, and I'll pay, you know, $200 at the grocery store so I can be happy for 2.5 weeks, a month. If I mean, if I really make it stretch, I mean, I'll eat all the good food in the first couple days, but you know, I'll survive off of like crap singles for.
Sure.
I used to like that as a kid. Now I hate it. But
dude, I've been like crazy budgeting. I've been living on like $200 a month for my food budget.
That's what I always plan for, and it never works for me.
It's like I don't buy meat anymore. Like meat's super expensive. And then
Is it really? I never even look at it. It's a part of my diet.
You just buy it, which is great. Like I eat meat. I'm just saying it's really expensive. Like I eat.
Oh, I guess if you're gonna like buy slabs of steak and stuff.
Yeah, like I eat a lot of like lentils. I eat oatmeal religiously. It's like every breakfast.
So
lentils, rice and beans, broccoli, kale, like all the veggie stuff, potatoes, and it's just like so cheap. Like I did the math one day, and it's like. My lunch is like $1.50.
Really?
And it tastes really good.
I spend too much money on food. I probably
Everyone does.
On average, I would say $40 on food a day.
Yeah.
And that's too much.
Well, I mean, if that is what makes you happy and you want to budget for that, I support you budgeting that.
This is what it does not. It's not good for me. This is what I'm saying. So it's like my happiness when I get that bacon avocado cheeseburger is like up here, you know, for like 30 minutes after the meal. And then my health goes down.
Yeah.
My bank account goes down.
Yeah.
And then when I think about, so I'm down here now. And then when I think about, you know, getting like healthy foods.
Yeah.
And then I'm comparing it to the taste of the bacon avocado cheeseburger.
Sure.
When I think about that, then my mood goes down.
Oh.
And then when I eat that religiously for like a week, I feel depressed. And I get to this point where I know that if I stuck with it for another 2 weeks, my body would be like, hey, I'm actually eating healthy, you know?
Yeah,
I feel good.
totally.
But nope, I just go right for that cheeseburger again to give me that quick high. And then it just, you know. It's no good, man.
It's a cycle.
It's a cycle, but I found that my cycle, like, has, for the past at least 5 years, the bad things that I do, the amount of time between those bad things that I do, is farther and farther apart. So like, you know, I'll drink at the Illuminati Hotties record release show. And I'll say things that I should not.
Great.
Didn't really. It just you know, I'll do something like that.
Sure.
And then the next time I do that, it's probably going to be in like another year or something. Like And it used to be like I was getting hammered all the time. So it's like I can see the progress, but man, it's still depressing. And it's all it's all diet related and like alcohol intake related.
It may be. I mean, it may be a mixture of a lot of things.
I know that does not help. Let me
totally.
That does not help.
Totally.
So
I hear you.
I've tried to live off of lentils. I mean, I've had to before because I was super, super poor.
Yeah.
And like it was that and top ramen and like an egg for breakfast. That was like my thing. My mood just gets so sour.
Well, top ramen's really bad for you.
I know. See, but I needed something. I needed something to pick me up. Something to pick me up.
I hear you, man.
I feel like
hard. I had I'm sorry, I totally
No, go for
cut you off. I had a therapist once who told me on the first session that she doesn't see people unless they agree to eat well, sleep well, and exercise.
Yeah, because then you're just working in reverse. It's like, you know, man. And I don't do those things. So, but that's the thing. It's like, I mean, I do, but just not as often as I want to.
Yeah, not like habitually.
It's not habitually at all.
And habit is like huge. Because it's like, I've heard it said, there's this like old school book by this guy, Og Mandino, called The Greatest Salesman in the World, who my friend Brandon Gonzalez recommended to me. He was a dear friend. But he talks about in that book, one of the phrases you're supposed to like own and like pray to yourself is, if I am to be a creature of habit, I will make myself a slave to good habits. And it was like huge for me to like accept, like, yeah, I'm a slave to my habits. Like that's a part of being a human. So I might as well make good habits for myself.
I know.
It's crazy.
It's crazy, and it's just so it's so true, and so there are just so many easy negative cycles to get into, like in this world. And I tend to, me personally, and I think a lot of people I know, they tend to start doing healthy things because they feel so fed up with all the guilt of doing the bad stuff,
Mhm.
and they're like, "All right, I'm gonna go for a run today," and then they like plan out their whole month, and because it's such a big load that they're not used to doing, and they've got like a month of eating healthy and exercising, all these things that they plan, they just get burnt out quick.
Yeah.
And it's hard to make a good habits, like for sure.
Mhm.
I think that it really, for me personally, is gonna have to be like diet and exercise, like at its core. Because when I've done those things in the past, like in high school when I was living with my parents and like I had good food around all the time, and I was like in sports, fucking loved life, dude.
Sure.
Like I was like nothing could stop me. I was a lot like younger and
Sure.
more my elasticity was better at that age, but I don't know, man. Do you get winded when you play shows?
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah?
Oh,
But do you notice it at all, like the next day? Because when I've played and I've been winded, like the next day I feel great. I don't feel... No, that's a lie.
I feel like I got hit by a train.
Really?
After I played.
Well, you really do perform. And I would recommend anybody who's listening to go watch your live performance. Who recorded that?
Yeah, I have some live like sessions. My good friends at Ring Road Media. So they're content creators and they have a YouTube channel, and they work out of a space at Downtown Rehearsal in LA, and they also have a space here in Orange County.
Oh, cool.
And they recorded 3 songs, and we have those up on their YouTube account. So yeah, that's what that is.
Yeah, that one for Strange Man is really, really good.
Thanks, man.
And as it's so crazy because when I wasn't a performer, like when I was just wanting to get into it, I would look at people performing, and I did not fully grasp how hard it was. You know what I mean? Like to perform in a way that is visual enough for the crowd, because I've seen amazing musicians play and not really acknowledge the fact that there's people in front of them at all, and they're playing this beautiful song and they're playing for themselves, but those people get overlooked like all the time. It's so sad because you have to be a good performer, and you are a good performer. You understand the front man personality that needs to come on, and it's so funny seeing you here drinking coffee all tired, because you really work it on stage, man.
Oh, I appreciate that. You're sweet to say that.
So who's like who are your buddies in LA?
My buddies, well, Johanna Chase, who referred me to the my 92-year-old friend.
That's so badass.
She's a great friend. I actually moved into her apartment.
Nice.
5 days ago.
Wait, the 92-year-old?
No.
Oh, okay.
Johanna Chase.
I was like, I feel like you're up to no good with that.
Oh, that would be
that'd be wrong.
That would be a step too far.
Yeah. Johanna Chase.
I'm not entertaining that. Yeah, so Johanna is an incredible singer-songwriter. She's going to be playing first on our EP release at the Resonant later this month. And then also great friends, the guys of Dirty Verdi, who are also playing the EP release. The guys of Sycamore, great friends. Everybody in Dream Phases and Drag. And then Kenny of Goon is a really sweet friend.
It's probably a silly question, but everybody that you know, they're probably from anywhere other than LA. Like they all came to LA, I bet.
I'd say it's like half and half.
Really?
It's either like we grew up in a suburb and came in, or people came in from like out of state.
Right.
But yeah, I wouldn't say that it's like a dramatic, huge percentage of my friends are like out of state transplants.
Do you or your friends actually honestly feel like the guilt of living in Highland Park?
I have before.
You have before?
I don't currently, not because I like
Are
have
heartless
completely
now?
come to terms with it,
Right.
but because in figuring out other areas of my brain that need addressing, like I can't hold that
Right.
all
No,
the time.
it's stupid.
Well,
it's stupid to let it negatively affect your life.
yeah.
I mean,
well,
that's
like
how I
so
feel.
so my friend Johanna I was telling you about once, I have this like hero wall where I have pictures of like most of my musician heroes, and all of them are white, and one of them is female. So I was like telling Johanna, I was like, it's so stupid that I'm like this white heterosexual guy with these like 7 white heterosexual dudes on my hero board.
Sure.
And Joe looked at me like immediately, and she was like, Eric, like, you're white, you're heterosexual, like that's what you are.
Yeah.
And like it's okay for you to look up to other people who are white and heterosexual.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing wrong with that. And yeah, it was like one of those moments where you needed to hear something that you couldn't have like articulated for yourself.
Right.
And she really like set me free in a lot of ways in that. So the other thing too is like, so I found this book called The Art of War.
Yeah.
No. The War of Art.
Oh.
Those are 2 very different books. Very, very, very different books.
I feel like I've heard Joe Rogan on his podcast talk about The War of Art.
He may have. It's like a pretty famous book with, people who are like creatives. And it's basically like a self-help book for creatives.
Right.
But
I think that's what I heard him talk about.
but the way that it's written is amazing because each chapter is like a page or 2. So like I read it every morning. And I've read through it a number of times, but it's like rewired my brain. But one of the main things that book addresses is this idea of resistance. So resistance is anything that keeps the artist from working on their art. And it could be like procrastination. It could be like sexual adventures. It could be like constantly being late. It could be like burning bridges. And then it could also be like legitimate things. Like he cites in the book, like maybe your wife is like 8 months pregnant and she legitimately needs you home.
Yeah.
But then he talks about this idea of, he calls it the principle of priority, which I don't think he came up with this, but he doesn't cite like
Sure.
whoever like did come up with it. But the principle of priority is that there's 2 principles of priority. The first is that you have to know the difference between what's important and what's urgent. And then the second principle is that you have to do what's important first.
That's stressful.
And the idea is that if you don't do what's important first, there will always be something urgent that comes up. So
that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So this book is one of the hugest kicks in the ass I've ever gotten. And one of the things that I've kind of realized is for me to talk about struggling with white guilt, that can be a manifestation of playing like a victim role,
sure,
which is a manifestation of resistance.
Yes.
Because when I'm a victim, I do not need to be held accountable for completing the work that I've been set here to do.
Yeah.
So that has played like a huge role. And also understanding too that like that the oppression on minorities is so valid.
Yeah.
But like everyone has their shit.
Sure.
You know?
I think that it's, or at least the way that I've felt about it, because I've had people give me shit for having things so well sometimes, you know? And I always think about it like, well, you know, I also know a lot of bands that are trust fund babies, what you would call like a trust fund baby band.
Sure.
But they're still getting to practice every day. They're writing their songs, they're booking their shows, and they're fucking doing it. They're not like out here like paying hobos to fight or like it's just, you know what I mean? Like you can still have money and be a good person. You can still be white and be a good person. You can be pretty much anything what we would call God-given.
Sure.
Whatever you inherit and inherent. Yeah. It's so weird. But and still be a good person. Mm-hmm. And you should understand that other people have it worse, and maybe in your peripherals try to look for ways to help, but still be a good person in your drive and your purpose, whether or not you're whatever color you are, you know what I mean? Sure. And I think that that's really hard for people to accept. And it's also fun for people to play the victim in the white sense. Like, you know, woe is me. Wait, does that even make sense? Maybe not. But I know a lot of people that really hate themselves because they're white. Yeah. Or maybe because it's cool in a way to hate yourself if you're white.
It's like it's a progressive name tag. Yeah. To deal with white guilt.
And when
I'm not trying to like put a blanket statement over like all white guilt. Yeah. Like but there is an aspect of it.
Sure.
That is like,
you know what's so funny to me? Like I get there's something that one of my teachers told me in like my junior year. I was writing an essay. He's like, stop writing I think when you're explaining what you think. Your name is at the top of the fucking page. I know you're thinking this. Yeah. And that was like, holy shit, that makes so much sense. It's so logical. I'm just going to write what it is I think and not put I think. And it's so funny to me because like every person I meet, I say it and they say it too. They're like, and I just want to clarify, I'm not saying everyone. Sure. And it's like, shouldn't we know already? Like, have you ever met anybody who's like, no, literally all these people, that's the way they are? I've never met anybody that said that if they were like sane, you know? But we always say, I don't mean everyone's like that. Sure. But we all know that we don't mean everyone's like that. We're just having like a conversation based on generalities and stereotypes because we're talking about the masses, not individual people. Sure. If I was to talk about my friend over here, I would like, my friend over there. I could be really specific to them personally, but
I promise you from this point forward, I will interject zero qualifiers.
No. I just mean, I just think it's interesting that like we don't just assume it, or maybe we do assume it, but we say it to make ourselves feel better, save our asses in a way. Because I know there's going to be people that listen to this and they don't like the things that I'm saying because it's going to sound like I'm defending white people in a way, which that's not what I'm doing. I'm just having a conversation with somebody about real things that are happening right now.
Totally.
And it's such a double-edged sword, man. Mm-hmm. You like can't talk about it you can't talk about anything these days without getting some backlash, but I feel like anybody that can listen to a conversation, take themselves out of the conversation, and just hear what the people are saying and analyze it for themselves without passing judgment, those are the people that are going to really make things better for everyone, minorities and the general public. Yeah. I went off on a rant.
I like that.
That's what I do. Usually it's alcohol filled, but not today. It's coffee filled.
Coffee is my favorite drug.
I
do it every day.
Me too. I also smoke cigarettes, which are not good. That's something I need to stop. But coffee is, when I think about things that I could go without, coffee and alcohol are like, after getting past that, like wanting them, for sure. But if I could not go without coffee, I would just walk down the street and be like, fuck, do you smell that? Do you smell it? It's like stoners when like they're like in high school. They're like, oh, dude, somebody's smoking pot. Do you smell it? Do you smell it? And it's like, yeah, I smell it. Oh my god, I smell it. But I get like that with good coffee. I'm like, oh shit, you guys brewing coffee?
So not this October that I've already talked to you about, but the October.
Not the porn October.
It sounded like you said porn October. It's like, holy shit.
Porntober.
What does it mean? Oh my god. That's
all right, sorry.
Funny. So yeah, like October plus a year ago, I spent more money on espresso than I did on groceries.
No.
Because I was like developing my palate. That was like my deepest zone of like coffee-ness. Mm-hmm. I was like really deeply into it and like considering a career, and like I like drove up to Santa Cruz a couple times to go to this like specific coffee shop, and
you were
I was like deep into it for a second.
I love getting like that with anything. It's like an excitement for life, you know? It's finding passions. Like I'm in the deepest crevice of my coffee phase right now.
Hell yeah.
And I love it.
Yeah.
But what I do is I happen to take on certain attributes of whichever author I'm reading at the time. And right now I'm reading lots of Patti Smith.
Cool.
And she's... First of all, I don't want to get into like strange coincidences, but I read some of her stuff, man, and if I like look for good omens or in my life, or like look for signs, because Patti Smith is always doing that, man, it like leads me down a really, really great road.
Yeah.
And I've always said that, well, to come full circle, she drinks a lot of coffee, so I'm drinking a lot of coffee right now. I like to imitate the people that I'm passionate about at the time.
Imitation, man.
Certain things, yeah. But it makes me feel alive, like you're following your heroes, you know, doing some of the things that they do. I'm not going to be like Bukowski and like be horrible to women and all that stuff.
See, was he actually horrible to women, or did he just write that shit? Because I don't know.
I feel like...
I don't know enough about him.
I feel like he slapped a bitch or two. You know what I mean?
Probably one or two. But he's written about...
You know what? That's the other thing I was thinking about when I was reading that book, and then I saw pictures of him. Well, I've read a bunch of his books, and then I've seen pictures of him. I'm like, was this dude really getting laid that much? I feel like you can be an author, but I don't think even handsome authors get laid this much, because he's always talking about sex.
Yeah. You know? I feel like it gets to a point, too, where if someone is talking about sex so much, it's obvious that they're trying to overcompensate for... not having a lot of sex.
I think you can become a character too, like your own thing. Like, I think that happened to Johnny Depp. I think he's just become his character, like, you know, in all of his movies. And I think Bukowski's done it. I'm partial to Patti Smith, so I'm not going to throw her under the bus. But I don't. We all become parodies of ourselves eventually, especially if we get fame.
I can't even imagine. I literally just like, even like doing this podcast, I was like sitting here like the first like 20 minutes, I was like, this is cool. Like, I'm just having a conversation. And then like somewhere like you were talking, and then I had this thought in my head, like, oh, like what if someone like hears this and like checks it out or whatever. And then I immediately had the thought like, fucking A, Eric, like just sit here and like have a fucking conversation. And it's like, if I can't even handle like hanging out on a podcast, like I cannot imagine what it does to your psyche to be Johnny fucking Depp. Like, of course he has to employ like some sort of public persona. Like I'm sure that I would too. To keep something sacred and human. I hear he owns an island.
Yeah.
He lives on an island. Just
so does Bjork. Which is so nice. But I don't know, man. You know, I worry too with myself, like I think about this scenario a lot, and I think, what would happen if, like, for some reason I got famous or became a millionaire overnight and was in the public eye?
Sure.
I would like to believe I'd be a good person, but I don't have healthy habits yet. And if you don't have healthy habits when you're poor. I don't think you're gonna have healthy habits when you're rich.
Mm-hmm.
And even people that are poor that win the lottery,
Mm-hmm.
they don't go on to become successful business owners. It all runs out. That's like, I mean,
and they're usually worse off.
They have addictions
afterwards.
and like it ends up really bad for them.
Yeah, the lottery's horrible.
Yeah, dude, I heard a commercial for it on the radio, and I was like, it was so sick to me.
Yes. Oh my
It was
god.
so
when
sick
I see
to me.
billboards for
Yeah.
the lottery, and because whenever I see an ad for the lottery, because they have the best marketing people working for them, like I see it and it like affects me emotionally,
Yeah.
and then like 3 seconds later, I realize it's an ad for the lottery.
Yeah.
And I just feel like so gross.
So gross. So
because
gross,
they
man.
know how to like
Oh yeah.
get in my brain with a billboard. It's nuts.
It's so sick. We're so like easy humans. Like
Yeah.
our basic wants and needs. My grandpa, he's not the sweetest, but he's too proud for his own good.
Sure.
And I remember growing up thinking he was really cool, and that he was always getting deals on stuff, and like, oh, he knows how to get. Oh, if that person can get, that coffee table for $100, my grandpa could find the same one for, 50. But then I started to think about it as I got older, and every one of his stories is like, everybody likes him, and that he got a great deal, and that he's really good at this and really good at that. All of his stories. He's never told me one story where he's failed. One story. And then I look at his life and I'm like, well, he's poor and he doesn't hang out with friends, just works, and he goes home to his wife. And I'm thinking, maybe these stories aren't as true as I'd like them to believe, or as I'd like them to be.
Sure.
And my grandpa is one of the people that would for sure fall for lottery stuff. And it makes me so sad. Like, because I want to believe he's a good person. And I think the reason why people fall for the lottery is because they feel like their lot in life is so shitty that the only way that they could get ahead is by being special and winning something. Which is the shittiest thing ever. It should be by hard work and trying to push yourself and be intelligent, but it's hard. It's hard to do that. Anyway, that's it, man. We're at an hour.
Now that we've deconstructed the lottery.
Yeah, now that we've deconstructed the lottery. So let's give people some stuff that you'll be up to, and shout out some bands that we should listen to, and what you're going to be up to.
Put a bow on it.
Put a bow on it.
The absolute biggest thing is, so our first ever release, my first ever release as a musician.
Woo!
This EP that we're calling Proof is coming out on June 25th. Well, it's going to come out the day after, so it'll be June 26th. But we're having a show at the Resident in the Arts District of Los Angeles on the 25th of June. It's $5. It's 21 and over. We're playing at 10. Johanna Chase plays at 9. Dirty Birdie plays at 11.
Nice.
And it's going to be a really special evening. So
Cool.
I hope that anyone listening can
June 25th.
can be there. June 25th. It's a Monday.
Nice.
Yeah, and that is like that, and teaching all my students is like all that I have the brain energy to to think about.
Yeah,
so we have the release, and then July we're planning on rehearsing for recording a full length record and deciding how we're going to go about doing that, because we did this EP ourselves.
Cool.
So we're trying to decide if we're going to do like the full length by ourselves too, or figure out the logistics of that. And, and hopefully, record, release the full length sometime in the future. So no other shows planned. As far as things that we should be listening to, on Monday, the day that we played the Satellite, for whatever reason, I've like never like really sat down and like listened to Joni Mitchell before, and like really dug in.
Yeah.
And I just got lost in it for like an hour
Joni
and listened
Mitchell's
to it.
amazing.
Like, oh my God. So I get to the satellite and Tyler, who plays bass. Oh, it's just like
yeah.
a wreck. And Tyler, who plays bass in First Fire, he's like, dude, like I just checked out Joni Mitchell. Like,
That's funny.
and we had this crazy, and we've been texting every day about like, check out this record, check out this song when she says this line. So I like can't stop listening to Joni Mitchell right now.
A girlfriend, I showed her a few Joni Mitchell things, and her song, I think it's just California, is like one of her most famous ones.
Yeah.
And we both just got so teary-eyed listening to it. And now whenever we go into a record store, she just doesn't matter what Joni Mitchell record it is, she'll just get it. And it's always good.
Yes.
It's always good.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes.
I second that emotion. It's not even a Joni Mitchell line. I was trying to think of one to like reaffirm that, but nope, couldn't think of one.
No.
So, any local bands that you think we should be listening to? Local to Highland Park?
Oh my God! I mean, all the bands I listed previously. I mean, Car Talk and the Hotties have obviously been on here.
Car Talk and the Hotties sound like its own band. Yeah,
that would be really fun.
They might be pissed.
Yeah, Goon is incredible. Sycamore is amazing. There's this band called Living More that's doing, I think it's their record release at the Echo this month, and Sycamore's on that bill, and anyone listening should definitely be there. I'll be there.
Cool.
Hanging out and supporting my friends, loving on my friends.
I love the Echo. It's fun.
Echo's amazing. Have you heard this band called Drag?
Drag, no.
So there's a band in Los Angeles that exists called Drag, and they're really amazing. They're going to be playing the Unseen Fest at the end of June as well, the same one that Goon is on.
Cool.
That show is going to be incredible at the Hi-Hat. It's the last day of June. It's the last Saturday in June, the 30th.
Ooh, that's nice. I feel like that's going to be a good show.
It's going to be an amazing show.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, man.
Thanks for talking honestly with me. And thanks for just driving out here, man, when you've had such a packed schedule. It means a lot.
I was really happy to do it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. And thanks for not holding my first drunken encounter with you, as my peak of existence. but yeah, thanks again.
Yeah,
and see everybody who's listening. I don't know. I'll never see you guys. Just have a good time. That's it. All right, that's it for the 49th episode of the Psychic Wave podcast. Thanks again to Eric of First Fire for coming on and having a conversation that I enjoyed immensely. Wait, is that right? Is that proper grammar? Fuck it, it's probably not, but it's late, man. It's still Thursday night. It's about to be midnight, and I had a really good time. That's all I'm trying to say. I had a really good time. And I feel very fortunate that he took time out of his day to come down here when he was probably super fucking tired. So thanks again. Be sure to follow them on Instagram at First Fire Music. If you want to follow me, it's at The Psychic Wave. And if you want to follow my personal account, it's at Andrew Sanishyn. Sanishyn is spelled SANYSHYN. If you're listening to this podcast, you can also find it on YouTube, and you can watch a video of all of us. It's usually up the day after or the night after we record the podcast. So go check that out and send me a message if you want to be on the podcast, or just send me a message and tell me what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong, what I should do more of, what I should do less of. Just send me a message. Let's talk. Anyway, have a good day, and if you get anything out of this podcast, just try to be happy, man, because I'm trying it too, and it's a long fucking journey, but I think it's worth it. So have a great day. Thanks. Bye.